In economic theory, the optimum market is where you sell at marginal cost. Marginal cost is after fixed cost. Once you pay for whatever the technology is, the marginal cost is what it costs to produce a unit. Classical economic theory, we've always said that the most optimum market is where you sell at marginal cost. Here's the problem. We never expected a technology revolution, digital revolution, that would be so powerful in its potential productivity that could actually reduce the marginal cost for some goods and services to near zero, meaning there's no longer a profit margin, and you can produce goods and services for each other beyond the market in the sharing economy for nearly free. This sharing economy didn't come out of the blue. Capitalism gave birth to this sharing economy. Let me be clear. As muddy as the sharing economy is, it's the first new economic system to enter onto the world stage since capitalism and socialism in the 19th century. It's a remarkable historical event. This is already happening. Zero marginal cost phenomenon is not theoretical. It's been how many years since Napster, the file sharing service? About 17 years? 17 years. Well, this little file sharing service started a revolution. We have 3 billion people right now on the internet, and now the Internet of Things, who are actually producing and sharing virtual goods at near zero marginal cost beyond the market, disrupting entire industries. We have young people that are producing their own music. And what does it cost to have a little technology, a little machine that allows you studio quality music when you want to record in your home? And then whether you send that music to one person on the web or a billion, it's zero marginal cost. You just need a service provider. Keep your power up. I was surprised when that Korean performance artist a couple years ago, 1 billion people went to his website. Zero marginal cost. We have millions of young people any given day who are producing their own YouTube videos. Take a little video, put it up on the web. 1 billion people can see it. Zero marginal cost. We have people producing their own news blogs and social media. Near zero marginal cost. We have millions of people contributing to Wikipedia and constructing the knowledge of the world and a nonprofit website for free. This is the most improbable experiment I could ever imagine. I don't know how Jimmy Wales came up with this. I would have said this cannot succeed. Adam Smith said each individual pursues their own self-interest and never cares about the public good. But in pursuing their self-interest and not giving a damn about the public good, by pursuing their self-interest, the society is better off. I always thought it was a little dubious, but that's how we grew up. But apparently, none of the millennials have read Adam Smith. Because, for example, in Wikipedia, you're all freely giving your talent, putting things up on Wikipedia, constructing the knowledge of the world. You democratized knowledge in less than 15 years, and the accuracy is... Now, book publishing. What's happening? People are creating their own free ebooks. My new book came out on the Pirate Bays before we could publish in our languages, and God bless them, they were ranking it before Amazon could even touch it. We have 6 million college students taking massive open online college courses taught by the best professors at the best universities. They're getting college credits. It's free. You can't win here. You millennials have won. Unless we outlaw all the technology, we've got to find a way to live with it and find value with it. Entire industries have been disrupted in the 17 years since Napster. The music industry has shrunk. Television has declined because everyone's producing their own YouTube videos. You're all producers, sharing with each other. Newspapers and magazines have gone out of business with social blogs, but thousands of new enterprises have emerged. Not just Google, Facebook, and Twitter, all of these are new, but thousands of startup enterprises, profit and nonprofit. They're creating the platforms. They're creating the apps. They're creating the connectivity. They're using the analytics and the data. It's a revolution. Well, we thought there'd be a firewall here. And certainly we could understand how zero marginal cost brought on by digitalization would affect the virtual world, but we didn't think it would move over the firewall to the physical world. What I'm saying with the zero marginal cost society is that firewall is broken now. It's called the Internet of Things, completely gone. We have millions of people now producing their own renewable energy right now at near zero marginal cost, free. And now as we move to car sharing, and as we move to driverless transportation, we're going to see the marginal cost plunge toward near zero in transport and logistics in the next 20 years. Let's go back to Germany. What's happened in the 10 years since that first conversation with the Chancellor? We are now in Germany at 32% of all of the electricity powering Germany now is solar and wind, right now, in 10 years. And this is a northern country, doesn't have a lot of sun. We're going to be 35% of the electricity solar and wind by 2020. We're going to be 100% renewable energy by 2040. Absolutely. And what's interesting is the fixed cost of introducing the solar technology and the wind turbines and the geothermal heat pumps. Solar and wind are on an exponential curve, just like computers. When I was a kid in the 1940s and 50s, there's only a few computers. They cost millions of dollars. And the chairman of IBM at the time said, we probably will need a total of 7 computers. Maybe 7. And this was an optimistic forecast. We did not anticipate exponential curves in computer chips, Moore's law. So all of a sudden, Intel figures out that their engineers are doubling the capacity on that chip every 2 years. This is still going on. So even if you're making $2 a day, everyone's going to be connected to the Internet of Things within less than 15 to 20 years. And the fixed costs are going to be as cheap as your cell phones in 20 years. Everyone's going to produce their own green electricity. These exponential curves are not going away. You know how much a solar watt used to cost? $78 to generate 1 watt solar in 1978. You know how much it costs to generate a solar watt today? Not $78, 50 cents. It's going to be 35 cents in 18 months from now. This is really moving quick. And this is what you're not told here in the United States by the energy companies. We have power and utility companies, some of them in my group, global group, and they're quietly, right now, buying long-term 20-year contracts for solar and wind electricity in Europe and America, quietly, right now, for 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And the Berkeley National Labs, government labs, just announced they're generating wind and solar. I think it's somewhere between 2.8 and 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. It's over, actually, for fossil fuel and nuclear. And the next big bubble, I will tell you now, is going to be the $100 trillion in stranded assets in the fossil fuel industry. This is going to make the subprime mortgage look like the small-time game. Because we're moving toward parity, and then solar and wind are getting cheaper and cheaper. That's what's going on behind the scenes right now. But what's interesting in Germany, once you pay the fixed cost for your solar panel and wind turbine, the marginal cost of producing the energy in Germany today, it's zero. The sun has not sent us a bill in Germany. The wind hasn't invoiced us. The geothermal heat has not come to us with a bill. It's free. So what happens when German businesses can plug in to a communication internet that then converges with an energy internet, and we digitalize the electricity grid so everyone can produce their own solar and wind and either use it off-grid or sell it back to the grid? What happens when companies plug in to an energy internet where the cost of the energy is near zero marginal cost? Think about when they have to move across their value chain, and at each step of conversion on their value chain, their energy cost is near zero. How does any second industrial revolution country compete with that? And it's not big Germany only. Little Denmark's done this. Anybody can do this. Who's producing all the new energy? In Germany, there are 4 major power companies, EnBW, RWE, E.ON, and Vattenfall, these giant global vertically integrated companies. And frankly, we thought they were invincible. What's happened to them in 10 years is what happened to the music industry, television, newspapers, magazine, and book publishing. Thousands of small players have come together in electricity cooperatives, farmers, small businesses, neighborhood associations. All of them went to the banks and got loans, these electricity cooperatives, and every bank was completely fine about giving them the loans. Why? Because they knew that the energy they generated would get a premium price when they sell it back to the market. Nobody was turned down. They're creating all the new energy. This is power to the people, literally and figuratively power to the people. What happened to the big 4 power companies? They're producing less than 7% of the new power, and they acknowledge they're out of the game. Why? To their credit, they were the most efficient means to produce and distribute centralized power, fossil fuel and nuclear power, vertical integration. But the new energies, they require millions of small players connecting where they are and collecting. You have to collect the sun everywhere in little amounts, and the wind everywhere where you are. and the geothermal heat everywhere where it is. And rewards cooperatives who laterally scale and join together in networks. Big companies can't put all these players together. The players come together in their own regions, the cooperatives, and they join together. It is power to the people. Does this mean this is the end of the energy companies? Not necessarily. Many will go out of business. Some will not. About 7 years ago, the E.ON, one of the giant four companies, asked if I would debate their chairman, Mr. Tyson, but in a neutral country, the Netherlands. We had a 3-hour debate. And I said to him, look, you're not leaving the second industrial revolution tomorrow morning, but you also have to be in the third industrial revolution tomorrow morning because you have a 25, 30-year transition to get from the second to the third and find new value. And I said, in the new system, it operates quite differently than the old system. In the new third industrial revolution, you make more money by selling less and less and less electricity. I said, what you do is you set up partnerships with thousands of enterprises, and you help manage the energy flow through their value chains. You help them with their big data. You help them mine that big data with the analytics. You help them with their algorithms and apps, dramatically increase their productivity. In return, those thousands of enterprises will share their gains back with the power companies. It's called performance contracts. We're now doing it. Guess what? Last year, the chairman of E.ON, took him 7 years. They're moving to renewable energies, and they want to help manage parts of the energy internet with energy services. EDF, the great nuclear power in France, has joined our group. We're doing the whole build-out of the third industrial revolution in parts of Europe, in northern France, the Netherlands, Luxembourg. And EDF said, we're with you. They're on the ground helping lay this out. They're not leaving nuclear tomorrow, but they see that the handwriting's on the wall. So the companies that don't go there, we don't need them. It's not just Europe, now China. When President Xi came into power with Premier Li announced that and I was pleased, he announced he had read my book, The Third Industrial Revolution. He put out a public announcement. I'd never met him. I'd never even been to China. And he instructed the central government of China to begin looking at these themes that I'm laying out to you to move China to a third industrial revolution. They're mindful in China. They lost the whole first industrial revolution. They missed almost all the second industrial revolution and came in the tail in the last 10 years. And they said, we're not going to lose the third industrial revolution. We want to collaborate with the third industrial revolution. And they said, quote, be among the leaders, to show you how fast they move. I've been shuttling back and forth, but after the first visit, it was about 11 weeks later, the chairman of the state grid, which is the largest electricity grid in the world, announced an $82 billion 4-year commitment to digitalize the Chinese grid so that millions of Chinese people could produce their own solar and wind in their local communities and share it back on an energy internet. That started this year. Yeah. Watch Europe, watch China. The coming together of the communication internet with the renewable energy internet gives rise to the automated GPS driverless transportation logistics internet. We built the whole global economy in the second industrial revolution around car ownership. That's what this was all about. You've thrown us a curve. You really have. Apparently, you don't want to own cars anymore. This is grandma and grandpa. They got 2 cars sitting in the driveway, cleaning and waxing them every few weeks, and they're never used. Or they're at the office 90% of the day, never used. You don't want to own cars. You want access to mobility and car-sharing networks, not ownership of cars in markets, correct? So there's a problem here. The problem is, for every car shared in car sharing in the sharing economy, we're eliminating 15 cars. This is both the problem and the opportunity. Larry Burns was the former vice president of General Motors until a few years ago. Now he's a professor at the University of Michigan. So Larry just did a study, very revealing. He studied Ann Arbor, Michigan. We can eliminate 80% of the vehicles with better mobility, cheaper. Now let's extrapolate Larry's study. We've got 1 billion cars, buses, and trucks choking us in traffic around the world. They're the 3rd major cause of global warming emissions. The number 1 cause of global warming emissions is buildings. But in Europe, we're now retrofitting those buildings, transforming into micro power plants and big data centers off carbon. Anybody know what the number 2 cause of climate change, global warming emissions are by industrial activity? Number 1 is buildings. We always talk about it. Number 3 is transport. What's number 2?
Consumption of meat.
Meat. We have 1.3 billion cows. They take up about 23% of the land mass of the earth. I love cows, but the methane they produce is a major contributor to global warming, much more powerful than CO2. And then when we pasture those animals, we have the fertilizers that emit nitrous oxide, and it goes on and on. And I should say that, without mentioning names, even some of the prophetic voices and the climate change debate will never mention this because they do not want to antagonize people and even suggest that we may want to change our diet and move down the food chain so that we can live healthy, respect our fellow creatures, and at the same time, mitigate climate change. So you never hear this in the debate. Never. Number 3 is transport. So if Larry's right, Larry Burns, we're going to eliminate probably 80% of the vehicles in the world in the next 2 generations because the millennials, your children and grandchildren, are never going to own cars again. This I know. And the remaining 200 million vehicles, they're going to be electric. They're going to be fuel cell driven. They're going to be operated by near zero marginal cost renewable energy. This is already happening. They're going to be 3D printed with composite recycled materials at low marginal cost. They're going to be driverless. This is already happening. This gets to the question of, is this the end of the road for transportation companies? Not necessarily, but they have to change their business model. While they're still in the 2nd industrial revolution selling cars, buses, and trucks, they have to move to the 3rd industrial revolution where they help manage vast networks along with all the other players. This is a very cool thing that happened about 6 weeks ago. Daimler asked me to join them. Daimler invented the internal combustion engine, so I'm always mindful they're a step ahead. And the chairman of Daimler Trucks brought together 350 journalists from around the world in Germany, asked me to come in. I laid out the same story we're talking about here. And then the chairman of Daimler Trucks, who's one of the 8 board of directors, he announced that Daimler's in a new business, and that is logistics on the transportation internet. And he announced that Daimler had equipped in the last 3 years 300,000 trucks full of sensors, 300,000 vehicles, and they're on the roads now. These are what I call big data, mobile big data centers. And these trucks are collecting data all across the transport corridors of Europe on traffic flows, weather conditions, availability of warehouses, all of the data you would need if you're a small business, a large business, or just a homeowner to be able to increase your aggregate efficiencies and productivity, reduce your ecological footprint, and anytime you're involved in moving shipments from A to B. Then, this is what's really interesting. He dimmed the lights and they went to a helicopter feed live on the German expressway. And the helicopter zooms in on these 3 trucks on the German expressway, and then they went right into the cab of the trucks, and the drivers are waving and talking to everybody in the room. And the chairman of Daimler Trucks said, "Okay, gentlemen, take your hands off the wheel, take your feet off the pedals." All of a sudden, the drivers became software analysts. No longer drivers, they were software analysts monitoring the data. The trucks then started to platoon together, automated, into a mobile data, almost a train going down the highways, collecting data. So they're providing the data and then the analytics so that you will have apps so that you can find ways to increase your aggregate efficiency and be a player in the system. Smart. So